Hello, everybody, and welcome to another QuickBooks Power Hour. We're very glad to have you joining us today, and today's a great day because we're talking about what's new in QuickBooks 2016. Glad to have you joining us for this webinar today. Just quickly, a little bit about the QB Power Hour. It's a webinar series that we usually do every other week on Thursdays starting at noon Eastern, but right now we've got them every week for a while because there's so much to cover. Usually we're talking about QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online, as well as bringing in a special guest for some specific third-party apps or practice management or other things that are going to help accounting professionals in your practice. The agenda today is we're going to talk just a little bit about the QB Power Hour and Hector and myself, the CPE process. We've got a couple announcements and updates with some upcoming events. Then Hector's going to get into it and cover the new features of QuickBooks Accountant 2016. So we do have a lot to cover again today. My name is Michelle Long. I'm a CPA, the owner of Long for Success in the Kansas City, Missouri area, author of several different books. You can check them out on Amazon. LinkedIn group now has over 150,000 members. Can you believe that? And I'm thrilled to be a speaker for Intuit and travel across the U.S., Canada, as well as other countries, helping people learn more about QuickBooks. Hector, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself now?
Hi, everybody. I work and live in Miami, Florida. I teach QuickBooks in my own classroom. There's the picture of my classroom. Is my pride and joy after my kids. And we do a customized QuickBooks and Excel training here in Miami. And I'm a member of the Intuit Trainer Writer Network. And I'm also a Microsoft Office specialist. Glad to be here. So I'll talk about the CPE process. If you need CPE, you have to make sure that you're logged in for 50 minutes or more. CPE is only on the live webinar, not on the recordings. However, you can obviously watch the recordings at your leisure, but we just don't provide CPE for recordings that you watch on your own. The CPE password will be provided somewhere in the middle of the webinar, and then make sure you write that down. And then towards the end of the webinar, we'll ask a polling question, and you must answer it then and there. If you don't answer the CPE question there, it just won't work. If you email me the CPE keyword and said you were in the bathroom when the CPE keyword came up, we won't accept that. This is the only measurement. We simplified it to a simple CPE keyword. Is the only measurement system that we have, so we must abide by it. And the certificates will be emailed to you within 3 weeks. Sometimes I do it faster, but no more than 3 weeks. Michelle, you want to talk about the upcoming events?
Certainly, thank you. So the first thing that I want to let everybody know about is the QuickBooks Virtual Conference. This is the Intuit Virtual Conference that's available usually a couple times a year, and that's coming up next week on the 16th and the 17th. And I'd love to have you join me for that because Hector today is going to be talking about what's new in QuickBooks Desktop. And next week at the virtual conference on Wednesday, late in the day, I believe it's 6 p.m. Eastern time, I will be covering what's new in QuickBooks Online as well as what's new in the ProAdvisor program because there are some changes and some announcements. So I'd love to have you join me for that. Also then, QuickBooks Connect in San Jose, California, November 2nd through the 4th. Hector and I both will be there presenting. Amazing conference. You definitely want to try to go to that if at all possible. It's one of those don't miss events. And then right after that is LeaderCon in Las Vegas, another great conference. Hector and I are going to be doing QB Power Hour live from Vegas. Love to have you join us at that as well. And then also all the QuickBooks Online certification prep training that's going on. It's in various cities and dates, and Hector and I both are coming to Syracuse, New York City, and Long Island in October. And that one's so great, and we get so many questions about it in Intuit Academy. I want to take just a minute and toggle over here and show you about the Intuit Academy event. Sorry, let me get the right thing up. So if you go to intuitacademy.com, just go to intuitacademy.com. In here, you're going to find several different training events down here. Here are the in-person events. This is the cities that we're going to, the road show, if you will. So in there, if you click that link, it opens this screen, and you can see all the different cities that we're going to. Like I mentioned, Hector and I are going to the East Coast, Syracuse, New York, and Long Island. Hector and I also will be doing Florida, this route here in January, as well as I'm going to Charlotte, North Carolina, Atlanta, Nashville. So love to have you join us for some of these events. So go out here and look around, see if you find your city, and then go ahead and register for this training event. It is free. You can get up to 5 CPE credits, and we prepare you for taking the certification exam. Now, if it's not a city near you or you're unable to attend one of those, then click on this link right here where it talks about the free live webinar training. Every week there are webinars going on that are available online to also help you prepare for the certification, as well as some other ones. So for example, this afternoon, in just a little while, actually less than an hour now, I'm going to be doing this one right here on part 5 of the certification prep series. But you can see there's lots of webinars that are available out here as well. Again, these are eligible for CPE and they're free for you as well. So I would encourage you to check out some of these training resources. You know, Hector and I try to bring you lots of great information, but there's lots of other great resources out there as well. So with that, thanks everybody for joining us today. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Hector to cover the what's new in QuickBooks Desktop. And then I'm going to have to log off here in just a little bit. Like I said, I've got that other webinar coming up. So I'm going to turn it over to Hector. So if you want to go ahead and pass it or transfer presenter to you, Hector, I will stay on for a little while and answer questions as I can. But take it away, Hector.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Michelle. I appreciate that. All right, so we're going to talk about what's new in QuickBooks 2016, and that's something really important to kind of be aware of is that this week, actually on Tuesday, 2 days ago, QuickBooks Accountant 2016 came out, and this is what we call Release 1. However, QuickBooks Pro, Premier, and Enterprise have not officially released. So it is possible that more features will be released when Pro, Premier, and Enterprise come out, especially on the Enterprise side, because you will see in the presentation later on how we really don't have that many new things to show on the Enterprise part, because I don't think Intuit has yet released the Enterprise new features. However, based on the QuickBooks Accountant 2016 edition that came out a couple of days ago, and if you're a QuickBooks Pro advisor, you should be able to have access to it. If you're not a QuickBooks Pro advisor, then you just don't have access to it yet. So let's talk about first what's going to be available in all editions. So on Pro, Premier, Accountant, Enterprise, we're going to have 6 new features. We're going to have the bill tracker. I would say that's the largest of the features. It's actually an entire module that we're going to cover. We're going to have a new date filter called this fiscal year to last month, which is absolutely awesome, and I'll kind of cover why that's awesome. We have a new option to clear the send to queue for forms. So if you have a lot of invoices that you marked as to be emailed and you want to unmark them all, there's a great feature for that. We have we have a new feature that allows you to use custom fields to filter inventory reports, which is actually pretty neat because we can actually have different inventory items with custom fields, and we can use those attributes to separate, how much of this type of inventory I have and how much of that type of inventory I have. Then there's also support for continuous feed printers. So if you have a label printer that has a roll in it, and you want to print labels with that, now you can do it with QuickBooks 2016. So I thought that was actually really, it's a minor feature, but it's really interesting. And then we have an enhance, rebuild, and verify. Basically, it would now give you feedback after you rebuild and verify. It'll give you feedback of what items were fixed and what items you were not able to fix in the process. So let me jump over to QuickBooks Desktop here now. Whoops, that wasn't it. Let me go to the QuickBooks Desktop here now. There we go. Okay, you should be able to see my QuickBooks Desktop screen. Michelle, if you're still on, can you just tell me if the QuickBooks Desktop screen is still showing?
Yes, Hector, I can see your screen.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right. Okay, so in the one I have open here is QuickBooks Enterprise Accountant 2016. However, we're going to cover what's new on all versions. So what I'm about to show you, you should expect to see in Pro, Premier, Accountant, Enterprise in all editions. So the first big feature is the bill tracker. It's here under vendors and it's called bill tracker. And before I open that up to give you some context, uh, I'm not sure if it was 2014 or 2015. I think it was 2014. They introduced the income tracker, and this is not a new feature for 2016. This has been on for at least a year or two, and this basically allow you to have one dashboard that showed me invoices, sales orders, estimates. So the bill tracker is kind of like the cousin or the sister of this one, which looks exactly the same. However, it's all having to do with vendors. So for example, if I wanted to see all the open bills, I could just click on that orange bar there that says unpaid. And by clicking on that, it filters to all the open bills. And I can hear where it says group by on the right, I can click on group by vendor, and I can actually have all my bills grouped and organized by vendor. Now, why would I want them this way? Well, maybe I want to select these two bills here from Daigle, and then I want to go to patent here and select these two bills, and I want to go to Timberloft and select these two bills, right? So it's kind of a real quick way for you to organize all the bills that you're looking at. And then here at the bottom, let me just resize it so you can see it. So here in the bottom where it says batch actions, I can click on pay bills, and QuickBooks will automatically only check those bills and mark them ready for you to pay in the pay bill screen. So it's sort of a way of quickly batching what bills you're going to pay. So that's one of the real neat features about the bill tracker. The other real neat feature about it is being able to close. So this is huge, by the way. For a lot of my clients, this is huge, being able to close open POs. So for example, let's say you're at a client's QuickBooks file and they have hundreds of purchase orders old from 2 years ago, from 5 years ago, whatever. We have tons of purchase orders that are still sitting there open. So if I pull a report, let me just go back to the traditional way of looking at open purchase orders in this case. It would be under purchases and open purchase orders. This is a traditional way of managing purchase orders per se. Okay, so in this report, in this specific report, if this report happens to be huge, 100 pages, right? Because they have almost every open PO from the past. What you can do is you can select all the ones. I can sort these by date or whatever, and I can select which are the ones that I want to close, and I can go to batch action and go to close purchase orders. And by doing that, I completely get rid of them from my open PO system. And if I go back to my report, the report of open purchase orders, it goes away. So I think other than the pizzazz of the bill tracker and just the neat way of organizing your bills and your accounts payable, I think that specific function is really, really big because there was no other way in the past to close a whole bunch of open purchase orders. Now on the income tracker, let me just go back into customers here. On the income tracker, let me go back to income tracker. If you were to try to do the same thing for sales orders, and I'll click on select all, yeah, there's no way to close the sales orders, right? Or with an estimates, there's no way to make all these estimates. Actually, with estimates, yes, you can make estimates inactive in batch, but you cannot close out sales orders in batch. So I thought that was kind of interesting, right? So you can inactivate estimates in batch through this feature here, and you can close POs in batch, but you cannot close sales orders in batch. So that's something good to know. Okay, so that's bill tracker, and let's go for the next feature, which I really really like, which is a new date filter. So I'm gonna go to reports, company financial, profit and loss, and the default date filter here on the top left for a profit and loss is this month to date. Okay, so everybody knows this. Every time you open a PO, I mean a profit and loss, that's exactly what comes out. Now, with this new filter, is right here. It's called this fiscal year to last month. Now, a lot of people have given me feedback that, well, I don't understand what the value of this is, and I'll tell you, the value is actually really really big because, as far as I know, most people don't show financial statements until the banks have been reconciled. So if I'm in the middle of the month, like right now is September 10th, and I pull a profit and loss, I really don't care about doing this fiscal year to date because the transactions between, let's say, September 1st and September 10th. In this case, this is a sample file, so we're looking at December 1st to December 15th. These transactions may not be complete, they may not be verified, they may not be reconciled. So what most people do is they pull this fiscal year to date, and then they go backwards and they manually select last month, and that's usually what gets the report that gets displayed. So by having it as a filter here, it saves you obviously a couple of seconds. But where this is valuable is not just on having it as a quick filter here, is the fact that I can use this on memorized reports, and I can do this on report batching too. So let me show you what I mean by that. Let me go ahead and memorize. I'm going to select this year to last month, and I'm going to click on memorize, and we'll call it here this fiscal year last month, whatever. I'll just make up a code for that. And let me save this, and then I'm going to pull up a balance sheet as well, and then I will do this fiscal year to last month, and I'll memorize that as well, and I'll just give it a code here. Okay, and I'll pull up statement of cash flows. Let's say those are the type of reports that we pull, right? So let's do a statement of cash flow, do the same filter, and memorize. Oops, so I'll call it cash flow. Okay, and then when I go into my memorized report list, I'm going to go ahead and group all these. Let me create a new group here. I'll create a new group, and I'll call it financial statements this fiscal year to last month. Okay, and I'll put all those guys under that group, and I'll be able to do interesting things with that group. So I'll show you here real quick. And this is the true value of it. I don't think so much is the filter itself, because we did have a workaround, which is basically select this fiscal year to date and then go backwards a couple of days, and that really wasn't such a big deal, right? You could just do that. But by having them memorized and as a group, now I can process multiple reports like this and select my group, and then see it's going to be consistent. So no matter what month I'm in, from this screen, I will always make sure that I'm never going to send financial statements that contain current month transactions current month transactions that are not going to be reconciled or not going to be verified. So by having them memorized in a group like this, I can always display them in batch, or print them in batch, or email them in batch. And that email in batch feature that was added, I think, in 2015 or 2014. So it's not new to 2016, but this is how powerful this filter can be when it's combined with these other features. Okay, so that is this fiscal year to last month feature. Let me just check here. Okay, the next one I'm going to show you is clear send queue in forms marked to be sent. Okay, so let's say, for example, I have an invoice here, and I'm just going to pull up any invoice, and I have it marked to be emailed later. And we're talking about that little check mark there that says marked to be emailed later. And I'll go ahead and save this, and I'll go back to another one, and I'll just mark a few of them, right? And then I'll save this. I'll show you what I mean. And then I'll click on that, and I save that. Okay, so when I have a whole bunch of invoices marked to be sent later, when I go to File and I go to Send Forms, it basically, all the ones that are pending are going to show there, and I can actually email all these in batch, right? So if, for example, you wait till the end of day to email all the open invoices or something like that. But what's new that they added was the ability to remove them. So now what I can do is I can click on remove, and I can do them in a real fast way, where traditionally I had to go invoice by invoice and or mark them. So being able to remove the invoices that are sent to be that are sent to they're queued to be sent is actually a really big feature. Now, the other feature that they talked about, this is not out yet, but when I go to print forms and I go to print invoices, and then I'm going to have to do the same thing. I'm going to mark one of these here, print later, and I click on save, and then I'll select another one here, and we'll print later, and I'll click on save and close just to show you. So another feature that they've talked about, this is not official yet. This is not, I don't have any inside information or anything like that, but the other feature they talked about is adding that same little button, the remove button, in the invoices to be print or checks to be printed screen. But we would have to wait for future releases and hope that the discussion about that would actually come through. So unfortunately, I can't really tell you that this is guaranteed that this feature will come on, but they have talked about it. I heard a couple people discuss that the remove checkbox for the send screen and the remove checkbox for the print screen were supposed to release together, but in R3 on release 3, this is not out yet. Okay, so the other feature we'll talk about is the using custom fields as filters on inventory reports. So let me show you what I mean by that. So let me go into my item list here real quick, and I'm gonna go ahead and enable in my item list a custom field. So I'm gonna go to customize columns, and then I'm gonna look for a custom field that would make sense. Let's go this one, material. So I'm gonna move this and put it next to the name, just to kind of so it makes sense. Okay, so next to my inventory items, let's say some of them I have some text under that material custom field. So I'm going to go here into brass hinges. I'm going to go into custom fields, and then I'm going to call this brass. Okay. Then I'm going to go into another inventory item. Let's go to let's see that one, cabinet pools, and we're going to call this one material wood. Okay, and this is useful to create sort of categories, right, for all your inventory items. So let's go here, materials, and we'll call this wood as well. Okay, so you kind of get the point, right? So we're using custom fields here. Door frame, we'll call this custom fields. We'll call this metal. Okay, so when I have specific uh, custom fields like materials, I can now use those filters on reports. So for example, if I was to pull an inventory evaluation report right now, it tells me that my entire asset value is 32,000. However, if I wanted to know how much of my inventory it's wood, in this case, that's the material that we use, but some people could use different things. You could use um, you can use the brand name, you can use the type of product, you can use, whether it's non-durable or durable or whatever. So bottom line is we can finally use custom fields to have reports that we can filter by item type per se, or inventory item type, which is not available before. So I'm going to go here into material. There it is, and I'm going to put wood, and you're going to see what happens when I hit OK. What happens now I see my inventory evaluation report based on the material wood. Or if I go to customize report and go to filters and I change that from wood to brass or whatever, and I hit OK, and then I get an inventory evaluation report just for brass. So this gives you an idea of how really useful this could be. This is obviously just a random example here, but when you think about a major feature that has been requested for many years, which is having inventory item categories, so your clients can group inventory based on a particular attribute. You can do it with custom fields and report it now. Okay, so another interesting way of using this feature and is by going into let's go make an inventory adjustment. So I'm going to go to vendors, inventory activities, and click on adjust quantity value on hand. And when I go to find select items, let's say I have a lot of items there, right? But this is obviously not a good example because there's only like 10. But what I can do is I can click here where it says custom fields, and then I can put here wood and then hit search, and the item will only show me my wood items. And I go to add and select, and now I'll be able to just adjust my wood item. So where this could be useful is if you have a custom field for the rack number that's on the warehouse, or in the size or the material or the brand, and you want to just count those as a group. This could be a really useful feature. Okay, so that's custom fields as a filter. Now, we saw that particular feature was only supposed to be available in QuickBooks Enterprise, but we saw it on QuickBooks Accountant. So at the very least, I'm assuming that this is going to be in Premier and Accountant. I'm not 100% sure if it will be in Pro. Okay, so I can't guarantee you this will be in Pro. We don't know yet, of course, but I think that because it's an accountant, it's probably going to be on Premier as well, and obviously Enterprise. Okay, let's talk about the label printer support. Michelle, are there any questions that you know of?
Yes. Yes, one of the questions about the custom fields, does that filter only work for inventory reports, or can it be used for any type of custom field?
So
Does it work on other inventory reports?
so so the answer is those custom fields have always worked on everything else, but everything except inventory. So the new feature is not the fact that I could use custom fields in a report. The new feature is that they actually added the ability to do that in inventory reports. So before you couldn't do that for inventory reports.
And then somebody says, is the inventory adjustment still single user? Hi, Peter. The inventory adjustment, is that still single user? I don't think that changed, did it?
Yeah, that hasn't changed. So that has not changed at all. Somebody else is asking, can I have a report that uses multiple filters? Like, can I see wood and brass or wood and metal? And the answer is no. You can only use one. So let's go back to finishing the other two items that I had here pending, which is label printer support and enhance, rebuild, and verify. So let me talk about label printer support. Now, I don't own a label printer and I haven't tested it yet, so I'm not the absolute expert at it, or I can speak about how the great reasons why this is so useful. But basically, let's say if I'm going to print some labels, I'm going to go to print forms and go to labels, and I'm going to print, let's say, information about my customers or whatever it is, right? So I'm going to print labels for all my customers, and I click OK, and then now I can have printer type. See, instead of being, a page-oriented single sheet or a label printer, which is a single label, I can now do a continuous. They call it perforated edge, but basically means that there's going to be a roll. And if I click on the continuous one, I see all the different filters. So this could be, again, a roll. The roll itself will have different sizes. And I can actually pick any of these and I can print them in a continuous, a continuous feed printer. Again, I haven't tested it, so I am not 100% sure. I haven't seen it work, but that's exactly what it is in a nutshell. If I click on preview, you can actually see what this looks like, right? So depending on the size of the label that you have, especially if you have multiple ones, if you look at all the different sizes, depending on the size of the label you have, the information will look a certain way or a different way. All right. So in this particular case, you get two labels per you get two labels at a time on this particular roll. So I can't speak about exactly what first experience because I don't own a continuous feed label printer, but that's interesting feature, and when I test it, I would love to talk about it later on. And the last thing is enhance, rebuild, and verify. So I'm gonna hit cancel here, and then I'm gonna go ahead and click on file. I click on utilities, and I'm gonna click on rebuild data, and that may take a minute or two. So while it does that, I'm gonna check to see if there's any questions. So go ahead and make my backup there before the rebuild is made, and I'm gonna check to see if there's any other questions while the rebuild is happening. Somebody's asking, what's new for Mac? Will you cover that? So if I do have time, I will cover what's new for Mac. Okay, I'm actually running on a Mac now, so I can do that. Somebody else is asking, is this compatible with the Dymo label writer? I don't know. I really don't know. I have no clue. I don't use continuous feed. Okay, let me go to view issues here, and this is the new feature. The new feature is before when you did a rebuild and verify, it actually just fixed the errors for you, but never told you what the error was. Now, if you click here where it says errors, you can hit the drop down, and a lot of this stuff is techie, right? There's a person by the name of William Murphy. He works with Woodard in Insightful Accountant magazine, and he talks a lot about the win log. And basically, what they did that was different was that now any errors that are fixed with the verify feature are shown here on this screen instead of going to the win log. Now, for the most part, you really don't care about what was fixed. What you care about is what wasn't fixed. Like if a customer is corrupted, or a vendor is corrupted, or a specific transaction is corrupted. It's not showing here because there's no errors with this file, but you will have another one that says errors we couldn't fix. which would be the list of transactions that are corrupted and they're causing further corruption in your QuickBooks. And for the most part, if you do find during the rebuild results or the verified results that there's corrupted items, all you have to do is delete them and recreate them, and you will get rid of that corruption. So having it here instead of having it in some obscure way, because traditionally you would have to go to, I believe it was F1 and then F3. I think it's something like that is the combination. I can't do it because here I'm on a Mac here, and then it takes you to the win log. But here, whereas when you press, in this case, when you press Control 1 or F2, right here on the bottom right, it says Review, Last Verify, and Build, and you can click on that, and it takes you back to the screen. So just because you saw it and you closed it doesn't mean you can get back to it and see it. So you can always go back and see that. So I thought that was actually pretty good. Okay, so let's go back into, okay, so that's features that are going to be available in Pro, Premier, Accountant, and Enterprise. Let's talk about the big one now. This is, whoops, the big one here is what's new on, actually, before I do that, let me do this one real quick. This one is one that was added uh, only, only for clients that work with sales orders and they go from sales order to purchase order. That because sales orders are not available in Pro, this is only going to be available in Premier, Accountant, and Enterprise. Again, this feature was only supposed to be available for Enterprise, but we saw it available in Accountant. So I can only make the assumption that this is going to be in Premier as well. So let me tell you what this is. So I'm going to go into a sales order screen. And again, this is for clients that create a sales order and want to create a purchase order directly from the sales order, but want their vendors to drop ship the product straight to their client. Okay, so when I have the sales order here set up, I'm going to click on Create Purchase Order, and then right here it says Drop Ship to Customer. So that's new. That's new for 2016. So when I click on Drop Ship to Customer and hit OK, basically the purchase order gets created, nothing new, but automatically the customer gets chosen in the dropship screen, and automatically, naturally, the ship to address naturally shows up in the purchase order. So that's the new feature, is if you are creating a sales order and then creating a purchase order from that sales order, and that purchase order needs to be shipped directly to the client, clicking on that box saves you having to choose the customer here and choosing the shipping address here. Okay, so that's the important piece to talk about in terms of what that new feature is. So again, that from what I read, it was supposed to be Enterprise only, but it's available in Accountant, so I can only assume that it's going to be available in Premier. Now I can't tell you for sure until Premier gets released, and that may be a week until it does that. Okay, so back to the big feature. This is the big enhancement. The one that may make it worth it, because all the other things are small, but this is the one that may make it worth it for accountants to upgrade to the new QuickBooks Accountant 2016, which is the ability to batch delete. So before I go into the feature itself, let me go into the bullet points in terms of what is covered and what's not covered, so we can talk about that in context. First of all, on this release 1 of batch delete, which is the one that was released 2 days ago, you can only batch delete invoices, bills, and checks. Now, logically, we will need access to deposits, right? Customer payments and credit card charges. However, they're not available yet. But again, this is not official, but I've read, or I think in different discussions, that on a future release, maybe R2 or R3, they'll bring deposits and credit card charges, because those are also really important. Okay, but I guess they're going to release it just with invoices, bills, and checks, so we can test how it works. We can filter by payee, which is good. We can show and hide transactions that have other linked transactions. So I'm going to show you an example of that, and trust me, you're going to think that's really, really cool, because we never ever had the ability to see a transaction with another linked transaction in any sort of report. The other really interesting thing is we can filter by transaction date, we can filter by last modified date, and now we have a new filter that we've never been able to use before, which is enter date. So you can get the original entered transaction date and the last modified date. So traditionally, if you modify a transaction, the enter date gets overwritten by the last modified date. But in the batch delete, we can actually use the enter date as well. Also, lastly, my favorite part is instead of batch deleting, I can choose to batch void. And by batch voiding, I can append the memo and actually discuss the reasons why I'm deleting. So I think that's huge. So let's go straight to the tool to tell you exactly how that works. So I'm going to go into Accountant and click on Batch Delete and Void Transactions. Okay. Now, before I show you exactly how this works, I want to give you some context in terms of why account, because I was there about a year and a half ago in the session where Intuit was asking, whether or not it's worth talking about doing a batch delete. And they asked us, they said, look, under what circumstances you would actually need this feature. So the main answer was, listen, a lot of our clients are clients that run their own QuickBooks, and then we get hired to clean it up. The most common thing that we have to clean up is we reconcile the banks, we clean up everything, then they connect the bank download, they do like a bank feeds, and then they don't realize that they're duplicating the transactions. So one of the main reasons we would have to go back and delete all these things is because of transactions that the clients duplicate, and that makes a lot of sense. That's why this cleared column was added. So I'm going to click on that clear column there to just show you. So basically, if a transaction has been reconciled, if a check has been reconciled and it's been cleared, it will tell you there that it's not cleared, and you're probably not going to want to delete a transaction that's been cleared. Now, it would be nice, in my opinion, to have cleared as a sort of as a filter up here. That way I don't have to just kind of skip the cleared ones, right? Because you know what happens if you delete a cleared transaction, you're going to mess up your bank reconciliation, right? So let's go ahead and skip the clear ones, and let's take a look at the ones that don't say clear on it. So let's say I want to delete some of these here. Now we'll take a look at this one in particular. Let's focus on the column that says linked transactions. This one in particular has a bill associated with it. So this is a check, a bill payment check, check 505, right? This was originally entered in 12/15/2003, whatever. This is a sample file, so it's got weird dates. And it was last modified on 12/15/2019. So that gives you some insight, when it was created, when it was modified. Typically, when it's created way in the future, that means it came from maybe a bank feed or something like that. So what happens if I actually delete this transaction? What this link transaction option gives you is telling you, listen, down here, you're going to have a bill that is marked paid. When you delete this transaction, that bill will no longer be marked paid. So that gives you just kind of a little bit warning that maybe if it's linked to another transaction, you should think about it twice before deleting it. Again, it could be something that you delete, right? So this could be a bogus transaction, but that's the purpose of having that link transactions column in there. Now, if I go up here where it says show link transactions, I can actually click on that, and it will not show me any transactions that have linked transactions. So that would basically narrow down my search to a lot less transactions. Now, the transactions that are grayed out, okay? The ones that are grayed out are either paychecks, sales tax, or tax payroll tax liability payments. Okay, they've grayed out or they disabled the ability for you to delete anything related to paychecks, sales tax, or payroll liability. Why? Because it's going to mess up your tax forms and stuff like that. So they just Intuit, I guess, decided that because that is so dangerous in terms of compliance and stuff like that, that if you need to delete duplicate paychecks, you're going to do those one by one. Okay, so let me select a couple of transactions here that I want to avoid. So let's say I want to avoid all these checks here. Okay, and then I select all the ones that I want to avoid, and then I have two options here. I have review and void and review and delete. And let me show you both. So when I click on review and delete, basically this tells me that these are going to be permanently deleted. There's no way to bring them back, right? There's no way to undo this. You're basically deleting them. If you want them back, you're going to have to recreate them. Okay, now it gives me two options. It gives me backup and delete. So basically it forces you through the process of backing up before you delete it. okay, which is important. Or if I'm feeling really confident about it, I don't want to go through the backup process because some QuickBooks files are pretty big, and backups could take 20 minutes. And if you're at the client's office charging by the hour or whatever, you may not want to do this. You may want to just go straight for it. So if you're feeling really confident about it, just go to delete only. It gives you one more warning. I really like the fact that it gave me one more warning just in case. And then I click yes. And then it goes through the deleting process. Now, when I go to view deleted transaction summary, I can actually print this out if I want to have a record of what I deleted, right? And so if I have a client folder or something and I want to put in there exactly what I deleted that day for that particular reason, that could be something that I document. Okay, so let me close that and let's do the batch void. I actually like the batch void better, and I'll explain to you why. Let's do it, for example, for invoices. And let me again, I'm going to disable the ones that have linked transactions to it, and I'm only gonna see the ones that are open. Okay, so I'm gonna sort it by open, and then I'm gonna grab all these open invoices, right? So if probably don't want to deal with paid invoices, so I'm gonna select all these ones that are open here, and let's say this happened to be duplicates or whatever. And again, we use the last modified date, the transaction date, or the enter date as a filter as a good indicator of letting me know whether or not this happened to be a duplicate. So I'm gonna go to review and void, and I have the same option, right? I can do backup and void, and I can do void only, right? Now, what I like about the memo is I can actually explain why I voided this. So I can call this Hector's end of year review, deleted all open invoices. Okay, maybe because this is a cash basis type of QuickBooks file, or maybe because the client said, look, I'm sorry, we had a new employee and she really know what she was doing and she was creating an invoice instead of an estimate, whatever, right? Whatever the situation may be. And then I'm going to go to, in this case, let me just go straight to void only and hit yes. It goes to the voiding process. Again, you get to see a report of that. Um, and then, what's really great about this is because in the memo itself, there's what I wrote. If I go to the transaction, you go to the transaction itself, the transaction is there, it's not deleted, it's voided, and voided basically means that if all the values are changed to zero and the word void is added on the memo. So that's what I like about this. You can always see the transaction again in its original form, but it's voided instead of deleted. So this may cause a little bit different um, workflow if you're trying to cover yourself for audit trail or whatever other purposes. Okay, so that's batch delete. And again, I like this tool. I wish I could also delete deposits and credit card charges. I think that those two are going to be very important, but for the time being, you can batch delete invoices, bills, and checks. Now, one thing I tell you is if you're really excited about this feature, um, and unfortunately, it's not going to work too well right now because if you're trying to delete transactions from your client's file, you would have to upgrade your client to QuickBooks 2016. And most of the clients or end users are going to be in Pro or Premier, or maybe even Enterprise. And those haven't come out yet. So for the time being, they're there just for you to sort of do cleanup on the file outside of your client's file, and you really won't be able to send it back to them until they upgrade to QuickBooks 2016. So if you really like this feature, it would be a great encouragement to get your clients upgraded to QuickBooks 2016. Okay. So Michelle Long, as she mentioned, she's going to cover a lot of details during the QuickBooks VCon next week, which is going to be, I believe, Thursday and Friday. And I just want to cover something that got released at the same time as QuickBooks Accountant 2016, which is the changes to the ProAdvisor program. So if you're a QuickBooks ProAdvisor, this concerns you. If you're not, and you never want to be, then this is not really that useful. But if you're thinking about becoming one, this is really important information. So the QuickBooks ProAdvisor now changed to 3 tiers. There's what they call QuickBooks ProAdvisor by itself, and that's going to be the free QuickBooks Online only. Right? This is what they used to call the Cloud ProAdvisor or whatever it was when it was released a year and a half ago. Then on the paid subscriptions, they're going to have 2 tiers. They're going to have the Deluxe and the Premium. The Premium is what we're used to. If you're a ProAdvisor, we pay $549 per year. It comes with QuickBooks Online, QuickBooks Desktop, QuickBooks Enterprise, POS certifications. It comes with QuickBooks Accountant 2016. It comes with QuickBooks Mac. It comes with QuickBooks Point of Sale, Multi-Store, and Enterprise. But there's been a lot of feedback of QuickBooks Pro advisors that they don't um, support their clients on Mac or POS or Enterprise, and to sort of listen to those that particular group, they've come up with a solution that basically is $200 less per year, so it's $349 instead of $549, but it will only come with QuickBooks Accountant Desktop. Okay, so that's actually an interesting part. So if any of you are pro advisors, when it comes time to renew and you don't support your clients in Mac, POS, or Enterprise, then this may be a good choice for you to downgrade and save $200 per year. But if you still want access to all the other versions, Mac, POS, and Enterprise, then you will stick with the premium, which is what is the traditional Pro Advisor program. Okay, so let's talk about what's new in QuickBooks Enterprise 2016. Now, unfortunately, there are virtually no new features added, but again, this is release 1, so I suspect that we will see more more new updates in the next month or so. But we did find something, and I'd like to thank Charlie Russell from Slater Report, which actually wrote about this, because otherwise I would not have guessed it. I didn't see in any of the other documentation, which is the ability to sort in the customer payment screen. So when I go to customers and I go to receive payments, now unbelievably enough, right? You didn't have the ability to do this before. When you're in here, you can now actually click on the job name, on the date, or the amount due, and you can actually sort these by whatever you want. So in other versions, 15 and below, you couldn't sort them. So what you see is what you get. So in QuickBooks Enterprise only, they added this sorting feature. Yeah, that's not a huge feature, but we did see that it was new, so I think it was worth mentioning no matter what. Okay, what's new on QuickBooks for Mac? So unfortunately, not a lot of new features, so it's not really exciting, but a couple of the features I think are pretty interesting. So let me go to my QuickBooks Mac here, and this is the great thing about having running the PC inside of the Mac, that you can actually show both of these here. So the major feature I thought that they added was when you go create an invoice, okay, before, this is unbelievably enough, in QuickBooks Mac 2015 or below, you could not resize item, you could not resize description, you could not resize quantity. Okay, I know it sounds like a silly thing, but it's kind of a big deal. Okay, so being able to resize in the forms, this is new for 2016. The other interesting thing that they added was if you have a description. Let me just go in here. I'm gonna go into the description and put a whole bunch of stuff. Oh, whoops! Let me hit cancel here. Let me put a bunch of stuff in the description here. Before, not sure what I did here. Let me hit cancel. Let me go back to invoice and I'll hit previews. So before, what happened was if you had long descriptions here, so if I had a whole bunch of text, okay, what happened was if I had a lot more text that would fit in that box, and I'm just typing here things at random here. Okay, so if I had more text, now it actually does the text wrap. So now you can actually see the overage in text that is there. Now, for people that didn't use QuickBooks 2015 on the Mac, I'll show you a quick example of that, because again, it feels silly that it doesn't do that, but I'm going to show you on QuickBooks 2015. Let me go into an invoice here, and let me show you what the issue with that is. So in QuickBooks 2015 for Mac, if I had a lot of text in there, and I'll show you, this is 2015, I know it looks identical. What happens is that text was hidden, and for you to be able to see it, you actually have to click on the description to see the text. But when you click out of it, it doesn't show anymore. So back into QuickBooks 2016 here, let me go back. Where is it? QuickBooks 2016 here. That is the great thing that they added, is that now when you have a lot of text in there, it wraps the text and it shows it in there. Again, it sounds like a silly thing, but it will be really useful. The other piece that they added was the ability to print directly on envelopes. And I thought this actually was pretty neat. So now if I wanted to print on an envelope, so for example, I wanted to print this invoice and I don't have the invoices that have the holes in them, right? The windows on them. Let's say I just have an envelope. I have an envelope that is it's completely white, right? No windows. If I go to print envelope, it would actually, and I'll show you the preview here, it would actually put your return. Let me open it as a PDF. It would actually okay, so it will put the return address here and it will put the client's information there and you can print straight into an envelope. Again, not a huge feature, but for people that don't have window envelopes and they want to print straight into envelopes, I thought that was actually pretty useful. The other new feature on QuickBooks Mac 2016 was the ability to print timesheets. Again, not a huge deal, but if you deal with timesheets and you need to print them, you weren't able to do that before. So let me go into employees, time tracking, and go to use weekly timesheets. I click on preview here. Let me select one of my employees. Okay, I can actually hit print, and now I can print the timesheet. Again, if you don't use QuickBooks Mac, it sounds like something silly, but if you use QuickBooks Mac, that was a great frustration. So the fact that you can print the timesheets is useful. You can also now also resize the columns in the timesheet. So with QuickBooks Mac 2015, you couldn't resize the columns. So they kind of refreshed this screen a little bit so you can resize them and you can print them as well. The other features that they added was quick adjustment to font size on reports. Now that is something that I wish I had in QuickBooks PC, right? Because right here I'm pulling up P&L in QuickBooks Mac, we have up here font size, if you see it up in the top right. So I could actually click on that and it will reduce the font size, or click on this one and increase the font size. So I think that's a really neat feature, and QuickBooks PC doesn't have that ability. Right now, let me go back to QuickBooks PC. If I wanted to increase the font size of this, I've actually have to right click, and while I right click, I change the font size and I hit OK and then hit yes. It's kind of a pretty long process. It would actually be pretty cool to see a font up and font plus, font down here. I think those things will be really useful. But again, I think that's pretty cool about QuickBooks Mac. And of course, it will be compatible with the new Mac OS X El Capitan, which is 10.11, which will come out pretty soon. Okay, so we definitely didn't have time to cover what's new in QuickBooks Online. However, for all three of these, the new registers, improved inventory tracking, and multi-currency, I did videos in YouTube. So what I'll do is I will, on the email when I send the video recording, I will send links to all three of these videos. And again, I don't want to cover multi-currency in 2 minutes because it just won't do any service. But multi-currency is one that we're strongly thinking about making a whole episode about, especially comparing multi-currency in PC and Mac. So and Michelle Long, by the way, next week will cover what's new in QuickBooks Online, and she will cover some of these new features.